She had always been a quiet girl, the kind who stayed in the background and rarely spoke unless someone asked her something directly. Most people barely noticed her, not because she wasn't capable, but simply because she never tried to draw attention. She lived in a small neighborhood where everyone knew each other's business, and everyone thought they knew who was talented and who wasn't. But she carried something inside her that no one had ever really seen: her love for the piano. Her family didn't have much money, so buying a real piano was impossible. The only thing she had was an old second-hand keyboard with a few keys that sometimes got stuck. It wasn't fancy, it wasn't strong, but it was enough for her. Every night after finishing her chores, she would sit in front of it and practice quietly. She watched videos online, listened to songs again and again, and taught herself by pressing the keys until the notes sounded right. She didn't have a teacher, a mentor, or a guide. All she had was her curiosity and the feeling she got whenever she played a tune correctly. For years she practiced like this, hidden behind the thin wall of her room. Sometimes her parents would stand quietly outside the door, listening. They didn't say much, but they knew their daughter had something special in her. She didn't need big praise, just the peaceful nod from her parents was enough to make her heart feel warm. One day, news spread around town about a community music program that was organizing a concert. They were inviting students to audition, and those who did well would be chosen to perform on stage. Many young people joined immediately. Some came from music academies, some had expensive instruments, and some had teachers who trained them for years. Every one of them believed they had a strong chance of being picked, but when she quietly filled out the form and submitted her name, people were confused. Some even whispered and laughed behind her back. They couldn't understand why someone with no training, no background, and no real piano would dare to join. It didn't matter how talented she was at home. In their eyes, talent only mattered if it came with certificates, tutors, or expensive lessons. Even the program organizers were surprised when they saw her name. They didn't discourage her, but their expressions clearly showed they didn't expect much. They spoke to her softly, as if they wanted to protect her from disappointment. She simply nodded and thanked them. She wasn't doing this to impress anyone. She only wanted a chance to see how far her love for music could take her. As the audition day got closer, she practiced even more. She didn't have fancy techniques or complicated theory knowledge. What she had was patience. She repeated the same lines again and again until her fingers moved smoothly. Sometimes she got frustrated when a note didn't sound right, but she kept going. She wasn't chasing perfection, she was chasing improvement. Late at night, when everyone else slept, she stayed awake, playing softly so no one would complain. Her eyes would sometimes feel heavy, but the moment she placed her fingers on the keys, the tiredness disappeared. Music had a way of making her forget the world around her. Finally, the day of the audition arrived. She wore simple clothes, nothing flashy. She didn't want to pretend to be someone she wasn't. When she reached the hall, she saw many other participants practicing loudly, showing off their skills, warming up their fingers, and checking their polished instruments. Some of them glanced at her keyboard case and quietly smirked. They assumed she had no chance. She ignored the whispers and sat in a corner, holding her sheet of notes she had written for herself because she didn't know how to read proper music sheets. She closed her eyes and breathed slowly, reminding herself why she was there. She wasn't competing with anyone. She was only trying to show the world the sound she carried in her heart. One girl from a well-known music academy walked past her and said to her friend, "Loud enough for others to hear. Why do people who can't play even bother coming here?" Her friend laughed and replied, "Maybe she thinks pressing random keys is enough." They didn't say her name, but everyone knew who they were talking about. The judges sat behind a long table. They looked professional, strict, and serious. Each participant had only a few minutes to prove themselves. When someone played well, the judges nodded. When someone struggled, the judges politely thanked them and called the next person. She watched quietly as one performer after another went up. Some played confidently, some played nervously, and a few made mistakes. But everyone acted like they belonged there, everyone except her. She felt her heart beating faster. But she kept telling herself that this was just another moment in her life, not the end of anything. She knew she couldn't control what others thought of her, but she could control how she played. That was the only thing she focused on. When her name was finally called, the room changed. A few people stopped talking and turned to look at her. Some raised their eyebrows, surprised she actually came. Others waited to see how badly she would fail. Even the judges glanced at each other silently. Unsure of what to expect, she walked slowly to the small piano placed in the center of the room. It wasn't like her old keyboard. Its keys felt smoother and heavier. She gently tested a few notes to adjust her fingers. The hall was so quiet that even the sound of a single note echoed softly. One judge asked, "Are you ready?" She nodded. She took one more deep breath, closed her eyes for a moment, and let her hands rest lightly on the keys. Her fingers trembled slightly, not out of fear of people, but out of excitement. She had dreamed of a real piano for years, and now here she was, sitting in front of one, about to show what she had taught herself. The judges waited with no expression on their faces. The other participants straightened up in their seats, ready to witness something they assumed would be forgettable. Then she began to play. The first note came out soft and gentle, like a quiet whisper. She felt the vibration of the piano travel through her fingertips, and a small smile formed on her lips. This was what she loved. This was where she truly belonged. But the moment she played the first few lines, the room shifted. The sound wasn't uncertain or clumsy. It wasn't random. It was controlled, emotional, and unexpectedly beautiful. The judges, who were sitting comfortably, leaned forward. A few people in the audience frowned, not because it sounded bad, but because it sounded much better than they expected. As she continued, her nervousness melted away. Her hands flowed across the piano naturally, as if she had been playing on this instrument her whole life. Every note came from the heart. Every shift in rhythm had emotion in it. She didn't look at the audience or the judges. She didn't need to. She was lost in the world she created with her music. In just a few seconds, the same people who doubted her now sat in complete silence, watching her with disbelief. No one had predicted this. No one had imagined that the quiet girl who practiced alone in her room could play, like someone who had years of training, but she wasn't done yet. She had chosen a piece that many people found too difficult, especially for someone without a teacher. But she had practiced it endlessly, breaking it down note by note until her hands moved confidently. Now, as she reached the more complex part of the piece, her fingers did not hesitate. Every part of the hall was filled with her sound, gentle but powerful, calm but emotional, simple but deep. In that moment, the whispers, the laughter, the doubts, everything faded. The girl who everyone overlooked was suddenly the center of attention, and no one could believe what they were seeing. As she continued to play, the hall felt completely different from before. It no longer felt like a competition or an audition. It felt like a place where something honest was happening, something unexpected and beautiful. Her music filled every corner of the room, reaching people who had never even looked at her properly. The judges, who earlier seemed tired from listening to so many performances, now sat with full attention. They didn't blink much. They didn't write anything down. They just watched her, as if afraid that looking away for even a second would make them miss something important. One judge slowly lowered a pen he had been tapping and leaned forward, trying to understand how someone with no formal training could play with such emotion. The other participants felt a mix of surprise, embarrassment, and quiet admiration. Some of them had spent years learning from teachers. Some had expensive instruments. Some practiced in big studios. Yet none of them had ever expected that a girl who barely spoke and carried an old keyboard would produce such music. The ones who had joked earlier felt their faces heat up. They exchanged awkward glances, realizing how quickly they had judged someone without knowing anything about her journey, but she wasn't aware of any of this. In her world, there was only the piano and the melody she had practiced for countless evenings. Her fingers moved smoothly, each note connecting to the next like pieces of a story she had carried inside her for years. She didn't think about being perfect. She didn't think about impressing anyone. She simply thought about telling the story of every hour she spent alone with her old keyboard, struggling, improving, and dreaming. As she reached the final part of the piece, something magical happened. She felt a kind of peace she had never felt before. She knew she had given everything she had. Her hands moved with calm confidence, and her eyes softened as she played the last notes. When the final sound faded into the air, she lifted her fingers off the keys slowly, almost gently, as if saying goodbye to a moment she knew would never come again. The hall stayed silent. For a moment, she wondered if she had made a mistake. She looked nervously at the judges to see their reaction, but they were still staring, almost frozen. Then something surprising happened. Someone from the audience started clapping. It was a soft clap at first, unsure, but it carried respect. Then another person joined. And another. Within seconds, the entire hall filled with applause, loud, warm, and genuine. She looked around, confused, almost shocked. No one had ever clapped like this for her. She felt her heart beating faster, but this time it wasn't fear. It was something new. Something like happiness mixed with disbelief. One of the judges stood up. Another followed. Soon all of them were standing, clapping for her, showing appreciation she had never thought she would receive. The other participants joined as well, some looking amazed, some looking guilty for ever doubting her. She lowered her eyes, feeling tears gather, but she blinked them away. She didn't want to cry on stage. She simply bowed her head lightly, a small smile appearing on her face, a smile she had been waiting to feel for a very long time. When she stepped back from the piano, one of the judges asked her to stay for a moment. She stopped, confused, wondering if she had broken any rule. But the judge's face had nothing but warmth in it. He asked her softly, "Where did you train? Who taught you to play like this?" She hesitated for a moment, unsure if she should say it. Then she admitted in a quiet voice, "I learned on my own. At home, on a small keyboard." The judge blinked. "You never had a teacher?" She shook her head. The judges exchanged amazed looks. One of them even let out a small sigh, as if he couldn't believe what he had just heard. They whispered among themselves for a few seconds before turning back to her. Finally, the head judge spoke. "What you have is rare. Very rare. You didn't just play notes. You told a story. You showed heart. And that is something no teacher can give." She felt warmth rise in her chest. She didn't know what to say, so she simply nodded. Grateful and overwhelmed, the judge continued, "We want you in the concert. And not just that. If you're open to it, we want to offer you a special scholarship. You deserve real training, real opportunities. You deserve a place where your talent can grow." She stared at them, unable to believe what she was hearing. A scholarship. A chance to learn on a real piano. A chance to study music properly. Something she had only dreamed about quietly in her room. The judges asked her parents to come forward if they were present. Her parents had been standing in the back of the hall, quietly watching, too nervous to sit. They walked forward, their eyes shining with pride. They didn't say much, but the joy on their faces said everything. The head judge explained the scholarship program to them, the training she would receive, and the opportunities it would open. Her parents listened carefully, nodding again and again, overwhelmed with gratitude. Meanwhile, the audience continued to watch her, whispering to each other in amazement. Some people asked each other how someone like her could stay unnoticed for so long. Others said they felt inspired after watching her performance. A few young students approached her shyly, telling her they wanted to learn to play like her someday. She responded with a humble smile. She didn't see herself as an inspiration. She only saw herself as someone who loved music and finally got a chance to show it. As she walked out of the hall with her parents, many people smiled at her, some even congratulated her directly. She was not used to such attention. In fact, she almost felt shy about it. But deep inside, she felt something new, confidence. Outside the hall, the cool air felt refreshing. She took a deep breath, feeling lighter than she had in years. Her parents walked beside her, smiling proudly. She hugged the old keyboard she brought with her, the same keyboard that had been with her through every struggle and every practice session. Her father gently placed a hand on her shoulder and said, "You did it." Her mother smiled and added softly, We always knew you could. She didn't reply right away. She looked at the sky for a moment, thinking about all the nights she stayed awake practicing, all the days she felt like giving up, all the moments when people ignored her or doubted her. And now, everything felt worth it. From that day on, everything changed for her. The community began respecting her. People who once overlooked her now greeted her warmly. Young children asked her for tips. Music teachers admired her natural talent. The girl who once sat quietly in the corner had now become someone people spoke about with admiration, but she didn't let the praise change her. She remained the same quietly determined person. She continued practicing every day, but now she had access to a real piano, real teachers, and real support. She learned new techniques, discovered new styles, and grew more confident with each lesson. Yet she never forgot where she started. She kept her old keyboard in her room as a reminder of her journey. Every time she looked at it, she remembered the quiet nights, the small battles, the slow progress, and the moment when she stunned a whole room with a performance no one expected. Her life had taken a new path, not because she wanted to prove anyone wrong, but because she believed in something deeply and followed it with patience. She showed that talent doesn't need fancy things, it only needs dedication, heart, and courage. And the people who once doubted her, they now spoke of her with pride, telling others how they had seen her first performance. They learned something important too, that sometimes the most extraordinary people are the ones no one notices at first. She walked forward into her new life not with pride, but with quiet gratitude. Her journey had just begun, and she knew that as long as she kept her heart connected to her music, every step would be meaningful. Because in the end, she didn't just prove others wrong, she proved herself right.